The modern world taught people to accumulate everything: money, status, validation, bodies, followers, memories, distractions, as if existence could somehow be stabilized through possession. But Buddhism begins with a brutal observation. Nothing stays. Not your youth, not your relationships, not your ambitions, not your health, not even the identity you defend every day like it's something solid. And maybe that's exactly why human beings suffer so deeply. Because the mind craves permanence inside a universe built entirely from collapse. When Siddhartha Gautama abandoned the palace, he wasn't searching for motivation or success. He had already seen through the illusion behind both. He saw old age, disease, death, decay. And once someone truly sees these things, the world never looks the same again. The teachings later compiled in the Dhammapada do not comfort the ego. They dismantle it. Buddhism does not promise that life will become beautiful. It promises clarity. And clarity is often painful. Because most people don't actually want truth. They want anesthesia. They want enough distraction to avoid hearing the silence inside themselves. And modern civilization perfected this escape. Infinite entertainment, infinite consumption, infinite stimulation. A machine designed to keep the human mind permanently occupied, so it never has to confront the terrifying fragility of existence. But the noise never truly heals anything. At night, when the screens go dark and the mind is left alone with itself, the same ancient questions return. Why does everything disappear? Why do people leave? Why does pleasure fade so quickly? Why does emptiness always come back? Buddhism starts exactly there, not with optimism, with suffering. One of the central truths of Buddhism is simple, merciless, and almost impossible for most people to accept. We suffer because we cling. We cling to people as if they belong to us. We cling to identity as if it were permanent. We cling to success as if achievement could stop death from approaching. But reality keeps violating our expectations. The body ages, love changes form, dreams rot, memories erode. Entire civilizations vanish into dust. Human beings spend their lives trying to negotiate with impermanence. But impermanence never negotiates back. That is why attachment becomes torture. Not because love is wrong, not because beauty is evil, but because the mind desperately tries to freeze what was never meant to remain. The Buddhist path does not teach emotional numbness. It teaches surrender to reality, to appreciate deeply without demanding permanence, to hold life gently instead of gripping it in fear. The Dhammapada says, "The wise do not cling to anything." A terrifying sentence when understood completely. Because if you remove attachment from a human being, what remains? Most people don't know. Their entire identity was built around possession. My career, my partner, my reputation, my dreams, my future. But Buddhism whispers something deeply unsettling. None of it was ever yours. You were only passing through, and so was everything else. Modern society survives by manufacturing dissatisfaction. A peaceful mind is economically useless. If people felt complete, entire industries would collapse overnight. Advertising exists to create psychological wounds and then sell temporary relief for them. You are told you are incomplete, then offered products, status, beauty, validation, and stimulation as salvation. But desire has no finish line. The moment one craving is satisfied, another appears immediately. A new body, a new relationship, a new achievement, a new distraction. The mind says, just one more thing, and then I'll finally feel whole. But that moment never arrives, because desire expands faster than fulfillment. Buddhism recognized this thousands of years before modern psychology did. The problem is not merely wanting things. Even monks desire enlightenment. The real danger is unconscious craving, living mechanically, pursuing ambitions inherited from society without ever questioning them. Most people never stop long enough to ask, do I actually want this life? Or was I conditioned to want it? Entire existences are built on borrowed desires, and the consequence is spiritual exhaustion. The Dhammapada warns, as rain penetrates a poorly thatched house, passion penetrates an undeveloped mind. A mind without awareness becomes vulnerable to every impulse, and impulses are dangerous because they rarely destroy life immediately. They destroy it gradually, one distraction at a time, one addiction at a time, one compromise at a time, until eventually the individual no longer remembers who they were before the noise consumed them. This is one of the most uncomfortable insights in Buddhism. Pleasure and peace are not the same thing. Modern culture treats pleasure almost like a religion. Consume more, feel more, escape more. Stimulate yourself constantly. But overstimulation slowly fractures the mind. A brain addicted to intensity loses the ability to experience silence without anxiety. And silence matters because silence reveals what distraction hides. The loneliness, the fear of death, the uncertainty, the inner void most people spend their entire lives trying to outrun. Buddhism symbolizes temptation and spiritual illusion through Mara. Today, Mara would not necessarily appear as a demon. Mara would appear as endless scrolling, as compulsive comparison, as pornography, as dopamine addiction, as consumerism disguised as identity, as a civilization incapable of sitting quietly for 10 minutes. People think freedom means having infinite choices, but many choices are simply sophisticated forms of imprisonment, because dependency always disguises itself as comfort in the beginning. The Buddha warned, the storm topples the weak tree. And modern humanity is psychologically exhausted. People are overfed yet emotionally starving, hyper-connected yet profoundly isolated, constantly entertained yet internally empty. Pleasure keeps increasing, peace keeps disappearing. Buddhism never romanticized suffering, but it understood something most modern culture refuses to admit. Pain awakens. Comfort rarely does. Siddhartha only began searching for truth after confronting sickness, aging, and death. Before suffering, he was asleep inside luxury. And maybe many people still are, because comfort can become a spiritual narcotic. When life feels stable, the mind avoids deeper questions. But loss destroys illusion. A funeral can reveal more about existence than years of entertainment. A heartbreak can expose attachment more clearly than philosophy books. Loneliness can force a person to meet themselves without distraction for the first time. Some people collapse under suffering. Others become conscious through it. That is why Buddhism often speaks about the lotus flower growing from mud, beauty emerging from decay, wisdom emerging from grief. The Dhammapada says, from a heap of rubbish blooms the lotus. There's something deeply tragic about human existence. The moments that break us often become the moments that reveal us. And perhaps maturity is simply this: realizing life was never designed to satisfy the ego completely. Buddhism places enormous importance on environment and companionship because consciousness is contagious. The people around you shape your perception silently. Spend enough time among shallow minds and eventually depth begins to feel strange. Spend enough time inside cynicism and hope starts looking naive. Spend enough time around chaos and inner peace begins to feel impossible. Modern life normalized psychological pollution, constant outrage, constant comparison, constant performance. Everyone broadcasting curated versions of themselves while internally collapsing. And somewhere inside all this noise, authentic human connection started disappearing. The Buddha often warned against foolish company, not out of arrogance, out of protection. Because some people pull consciousness upward, others drag it downward. The Dhammapada says, "Better to live alone than with the foolish." A painful sentence, especially in a world where loneliness already feels epidemic. But Buddhism recognizes a difficult truth. There are forms of company that deepen suffering more than solitude ever could. Some environments slowly poison the soul, and sometimes peace only appears after distancing yourself from unnecessary noise. There is a sadness in that realization, but also liberation. Most people think they are thinking. In reality, they are reacting. Thought after thought, impulse after impulse, fear after fear. The average mind is not calm, it is turbulent. Buddhism begins by observing this directly. Meditation is not escapism, it is confrontation. To sit in silence is to witness how chaotic the mind truly is. Restlessness, regret, fantasy, anxiety, memory, desire, a constant storm of psychological movement. And yet people build identities from this instability. They say, "This is me." But Buddhism asks, who is the observer behind the thoughts? This question changes everything. Because once someone realizes thoughts are temporary phenomena rather than absolute truth, a small distance emerges between awareness and mental chaos. That distance is freedom, not perfect happiness, not eternal bliss. Freedom from complete psychological enslavement. Modern civilization unintentionally trains the opposite. Shorter attention spans, constant stimulation, permanent distraction. The mind becomes fragmented, and fragmented minds are easier to manipulate. That is why inner stillness has become almost revolutionary. The Buddha taught, "A disciplined mind brings happiness." Simple words, but terrifyingly difficult in practice, because controlling external circumstances is far easier than mastering internal chaos. One of the darkest illusions people believe is that small actions do not matter. But human beings are built from repetition. Every habit rewires the mind. Every compromise changes character. Every lie leaves residue. Buddhism calls this karma, not cosmic punishment in the childish sense. Something more subtle, cause and effect operating psychologically, spiritually, and morally. Hatred strengthens hatred. Greed strengthens greed. Compassion strengthens compassion. People become what they repeatedly practice, and many destructive behaviors feel harmless in the beginning. That is the danger. Corruption rarely arrives dramatically. It arrives gradually. One selfish decision, one rationalization, one betrayal of conscience, until eventually the person no longer recognizes themselves. The Dhammapada warns, the evildoer may prosper until the consequences ripen. Modern culture often celebrates immediate results while ignoring long-term spiritual erosion. But Buddhism focuses on what actions do to consciousness itself. Because in the end, every decision leaves fingerprints on the soul. Buddhism is not fundamentally about becoming happy. It is about waking up. Waking up to impermanence, to suffering, to illusion, to the instability of the ego, to the emptiness hidden beneath endless consumption. And this awakening is not always comforting. Sometimes it feels devastating. Because once someone truly understands that everything changes, they can never fully return to unconscious living. But maybe peace was never supposed to come from controlling life. Maybe peace emerges when resistance finally ends. When the mind stops demanding permanence from temporary things. When it stops trying to possess what was always dissolving. In the end, Buddhism offers no magical escape from reality, only a quieter way of facing it. And perhaps that is enough. If these videos resonate with you, it probably means you're searching for something deeper than entertainment. Maybe clarity, maybe silence, maybe understanding in a world that constantly pulls the mind apart. And honestly, just being here, watching the videos until the end, sharing them, reflecting on them, that already helps this channel more than you think. But if you want to support the project in a deeper way, consider becoming a channel member or using the Super Thanks feature below the video. Members get access to more than 100 exclusive videos, deeper reflections, private content, and a quieter corner of this community for people who genuinely want to think beyond the surface. Every bit of support helps keep these videos alive, not as content, but as something increasingly rare on the internet, a place for real thought. And if this channel has ever helped you feel less lost, less numb, or simply less alone in your thoughts, maybe this is your way of helping it continue for someone else too.